What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. The Overwatch 2 What's Next panel was packed with information of things coming out in the next year. We saw glimpses of the new heroes for Season 10 and 12, the new game mode, changes and updates to the Battle Pass system, a massive overhaul on the rank system, and a suspiciously empty mention of PvE. We'll get into that. First things first, they mentioned the Clash Gamemode, which effectively is 5 CP or Tug of War in other games. This is a mode that reutilizes old 2 CP maps or assault maps, but stretches them out a bit and tries to alleviate a lot of the problems and the snowballing nature of 2 CP. If you've watched the channel for a while through the transition from Overwatch 1 to 2, you'll remember that we talked a lot about what we had lost, the tactical elements that made Assault great when it did play well. It's a mode that I loved, but was so difficult and execution dependent, didn't really fit with the player base at large. I was happy to see it go, but there was definitely some tactical elements that were lost. The devs explained that this new Clash mode is more flanky, which reminds me of just how in general they make the Overwatch 2 maps to be more free-flowing. Now, they didn't mention how it's similar to Push, but I'm going to translate why it's going to play differently. See, Push is also a tug-of-war type game mode, but the reason why it would not have the same personality of Clash is that the team fights are far more dynamic in where they can take place. However, the advantage states of where you want to take them is so severe that you spend a lot of time babysitting the bot or regrouping, and there isn't actually an advantage oftentimes to push into disadvantaged states of the map. It as well is also very flanky, and I think what they did with this Clash mode is effectively improve in some ways the Push game mode, taking advice from early criticisms from the competitive community. I remember saying certain suggestions that kind of sounds like it's going into Clash. As an example, if there was a score that you got for capping a certain progress on that objective in the tug-of-war type mode, it would add up to mean something over time, whereas the meta in Push, oftentimes you'll get an advantage and want to camp it. A key way that Clash is different is that even when you start to push the enemy back and are fighting for the next control point that's on their side of the map, and perhaps they have some defensive map advantage there, capturing a point puts points on the board. So there's a score to it, kind of similar to Flashpoint. This is really important to Overwatch gameplay, that you force teams to progress and win through sacrificing onto the objective. If you don't do that, then the game becomes more about setting up your team fights and playing defensively, and that's less fun, I think. So in the same way that you often will go down fighting on Control or used to do it on Assault, that will be present in Clash. And since the relevant engagements are going to be nearer the objective, you have more set execution type plays that are going to be relevant. I think it's safe to say that it's going to play a lot more similar to Flashpoint, just less random on how the map rotations work. The developers mentioned that they don't know when they're going to stop adding game modes. It seems they think we're not at game mode overkill yet, and I tend to agree, especially when some of them play kind of similarly anyway. They did drop a major hint that it's very unlikely we'll ever get a multiple objective game mode, because Aaron says they tried it and it just makes Overwatch lose its magic. And I think that's to say a lot of the function of the game revolves around cooperating with your team. So if you're too much on your own, it's just like you're playing a different game. But they also said they want to keep adding game modes so that there's more opportunities for different play experiences, different types of map geometry, and different benefits to different heroes and team comps, which I definitely agree on that. I think low-key, one of the biggest buffs to the game overall has been Flashpoint being added, a mode that I just think is incredibly playable. And if nothing else, just having diversity of the maps has felt great for me as a player. The devs said that Clash is the most sweaty game mode so far, and I think that's because it's probably a bit of a mix between Assault, Flashpoint, and Push. We've got a very important PvE update. I think it's important because they don't have anything to tell us, which quite possibly is the exact right thing they should do, especially for me, someone who is very critical of the story campaign, thinking that it was nearly not a game. My review of it is calling it not Archives Plus, but Archives Minus, to pay for an extended, drawn-out, watered-down game, and I really didn't like it, despite wanting to love it. Not everyone is as harsh as me, but I think it's fair to say that general sentiment among all of gamers, but even Overwatch fans, was relatively mixed. So their announcement for PvE is they have nothing specific to say yet, but she did use some very interesting terms to say that they have ideas for things that are canon or non-canon. So as an example, I thought some of those extra game modes, which maybe are either in the parody Star Wars universe they had, the Diablo universe, or Adventure Watch, or whatever, any of these could make for interesting PvE style content. I'm always of the opinion that they should try to do it lower in scope with a more refined gameplay loop, as opposed to kind of weak gameplay mechanics stretched out over more missions and more time. But that's just my opinion. Overall, they said they're going to be using the feedback they've been given, and I have to think that's also coincided with the pricing model, and as well probably for them reevaluating whether the return on investment was even worth it. I think there is a serious reality where they scrap the idea of doing an actual story very much at all, or maybe it comes out in other forms. I think that was revealed a bit where at the end of the presentation they talked about the battle pass, how they're going to be reevaluating the reward system of it to give you more agency. For example, they'll give you the option to swap out which mythic skin you get, especially important if you say didn't get a chance to get the original Genji mythic skin from the start of the game's launch, and overall much more in-depth changes to the reward system of the battle pass moving next year. But on top of that, he said that in this presentation, they weren't talking about the longer-term franchise plan, which for all we know includes other games, or unironically in Overwatch 3. And I think the muted reception of the PvE story that launched in Season 6 might make them reevaluate where they put that energy, if at all. Is it in a Netflix series? Is it in a mobile game? Whether it's the PvE, Battle Pass, etc., that stuff has been the most heavily criticized. And instead, what they made very clear is that they're looking to really refine the PvP experience, so doing more of what they do well, and that's the majority of what they emphasize so far. New maps, new modes, new heroes. And as a PvP player, I have to say I'm happy on that front, and we haven't even got to the best stuff for us yet. The best things are going to be the big ranked overhaul. We'll go over that after we talk about the new heroes coming out in Season 12 and 10. Further down the line, we have a new support hero called Space Ranger, who's a mobile, vertically mobile support who wants to fight from the air and space. She hails from the Mars colony. They showed things like her early concept of her weapons, but then also said it's already changed since that version of it. This one is too far away for us to know too much about it, but I would guess that the playstyle might be like Baptiste plus something else. If Baptiste has moon boots, plays up in the air, maybe we might expect this hero to play something like that, plus Kiriko, another support hero with lots of escapes, it sounds like. But so far for me, even as we're starting to get to some serious hero overlap, I really do feel like the experience of the gameplay is improving, because the options you have to express yourself or to have answers for what the enemy is doing or ways to synergize with your team keeps expanding, because maybe the set required hero that fits that exact situation isn't quite in your roster of heroes that you play. But as they keep adding heroes that are kind of similar to do a similar job but with different abilities, it allows for more flexibility, I feel. Remember, Mauga, who's coming out next season in Season 8, is hero number 39. Space Ranger will be 41. That's insane. In the nearer term, we've got Season 10, a new DPS hero named Venture. This is a Canadian archaeologist who's playing Dig Dug out there. They have the ability to go underground and dash. From the looks of it, for my money, it reminds me of a somewhat brawly playstyle similar to Mei or Reaper. This would be like another option. A hero that you aren't going to expect to be the ranged firepower powerhouse, but another option for if that enemy Wrecking Ball or Doomfist is hard engaging on you and you want to be able to escape and reposition. The devs explained that it's just fun to hit the buttons of this new character, very responsive in what they do, with snappy movement and attacks. I think it's interesting because they've added like mobility options to a medium range character, it looks like, as opposed to the severe close range brawler characters that have similar kit. From watching the gameplay, I would bet that Venture operates as like a flex interaction based DPS, with the unique way to deal damage underground as well as escape. The longest section by far is the ranked overhaul. So much for us competitive PB players to sink our teeth into. It seems like they listened to a lot of the feedback over the last year. So let's go over some of the biggest takeaways. First of all, this is coming out in Season 9. The 5 wins or 15 losses card system is gone. And let's face it, good riddance. Instead, it's being replaced not with the Overwatch S1 SR system, in fact, a modified version of that essentially, which gives you even more discrete feedback of the different things that are modifying your rank game to game. This will be much more descriptive. So this is called the competitive overview. And as you get a win, the different green modifiers are explaining in more detail why your rank is moving as much as it is. One of the examples is if you're on a win streak, which is a modifier that matters a lot more on new accounts or newly placing accounts, which will matter especially because they're doing a soft ranked reset on that season. And they said that that's something that they'll want to do yearly. And there's a little infographic button for you to click in order to get further explanations of the in-depth ways that a single win can be modified based on how much reward progress you get. So what it retains is the overall rank icon going from gold 1 to 5, or the other way if you are intending to go up. And now you'll just get a literal rank progress percentage to know how close you are to getting to the next rank. Before, it used to be some relative percentage to other players, which kind of means the same thing, but now you won't have to discern that and do the quick maths to guess what it means. It's just literally is what it is. And I think with this system, especially as you play over time, it'll make more sense as you realize the different modifiers being shown transparently before you, getting a ranked update every single game like we used to in Overwatch 1 and really just like every game. Some of this isn't so revolutionary, but I think the amount of transparency here is quite different than what we're used to. It's kind of interesting because they launched Overwatch 2 really trying to make it not transparent, then they explained everything behind the curtain anyway, so if you knew how it worked, you could not be fooled by the trickery and veil they put up intentionally for you not to know. So they kind of changed their mind on that midway. Like, you can't tell us you're going to do a magic trick and then explain how it works so we catch the magic trick and it doesn't impress us. So that utterly failed anyway, so they're going away from that, going the other direction, in fact, to make it more transparent. Now, on those modifiers, they're important because I believe it's the case that placing accounts have a bigger win streak modifier, and in fact, I believe it goes away entirely after you get over the placing period, which is the case for new accounts or in the rare cases that they do a soft MMR reset, which they will be doing in Season 9. Above that, fans of streamers or the streamers themselves who are in top 500 will be happy to hear that they're adding a new rank. So above GM1, where all the top 500s are, will be a rank called Ultimate, which is a pretty good name, I'd have to admit, for an Overwatch rank. It's like Grandmaster. The Ultimate rank, I'm gonna guess, probably will function something similar to Legend in Hearthstone, where it's a separate number, so you know your exact pecking order against others. They didn't explain this too much, but seeing how they've improved everything else, I'm gonna assume that they addressed SK's video and everyone's concerns about how uncompetitive and vague the old top 500 system was. And what I think the Ultimate rank will achieve is really delineate those 5 tiers of GM that we like to talk about if you're a fan of the Group Up podcast. While there's lots of ranks in Overwatch, from GM5 to GM1 to actually the tippity top of like the top 50 or 100 players, there's a massive skill discrepancy, and it isn't really well defined in our current ranking system or even the old ranking system for that matter. So this extra rank for the extremely good players will be able to separate them as they should from the lower area of GM, which I know already is pretty difficult for a lot of players to get to, but trust me, it is exactly as I'm describing it. As a low GM player myself, there's just a massive gargantuan gap between that and the best players in the world. Overwatch really is one of the highest skill ceiling games ever made. Not that the rest of gaming will ever admit that, but it's true. Okay, still plenty more rank changes to talk about. There's a new comp point system. You'll need to play to earn a new currency that will earn you, at least for that season, emerald guns. And they're also rehauling the comp point system overall in the following important ways. Instead of the competitive challenges list being complicated, they simplified it so that you can see clearly, in this case specifically, the title rewards you'll be getting based on the different ranks you have and how to get the next tier. Then on top of that, they did what I think is an intelligent change. This new competitive point system will be more about wins and losses rather than your peak rank. I think this is important to get all players at all skill tiers interested in competitive points, because prior to that, if you were GM, you got an order of magnitude many more competitive points for the golden guns than a bronze player might, which is a real big feels bad, man, because that means there's cosmetic items you will take forever to unlock, as opposed to high skill players just get it rained on them. And it's actually a problem for both tiers, because you don't really have anything to unlock as a high tier player because you're just showered with the currency that gives you gold coins and not much to buy with it. This will mellow that out and make it more important to win your games. But he said there'll be big payouts just for playing the game, as opposed to achieving a rank and kind of camping it and then getting all the rewards anyway. The pre-match lobby screen will now show the rank range, not just the average. I think this is pretty important because let's say you get in a match and it says gold 3 only, or maybe it's more like gold 3 to 1. That's a pretty tight range of players, and you know the kind of skill to expect. But if it says something from gold 5 all the way up to plat 5, you're going to expect that some players look to be smurfing in that lobby and others way out of their depth. This is really important for Overwatch gameplay because there's a few different approaches you can take to how you're going to play. Sometimes you just got to write off a teammate as a lost cause. Like there's nothing you're going to do to really help them get value, and you need to get more value yourself. But in more closely made matches, that would be a pretty big downside because the enemy team might work together better and overwhelm your team. So that's kind of the ebb and flow of how that ends up panning out. Whether the matchmaking is determining that you're probably going to need to carry more, or if it's going to be beneficial to play a bit more team-oriented style. Now, what am I saying? No player cares about any of this. It's just me who does this. A lot of the streamers, I think, as well, know how to switch up their gameplay based on how the matchmaker is expecting them to need to play to win that game. From my own perspective, if I'm a GM Lifeweaver player, but I get into a lower master lobby, I might need to pull out the BAP, Olari, or Kiriko to land some shots in order to help compensate for the lack of damage I'm probably going to have, because if the enemy support also is a GM support, hitting headshots as Olari, I'm not really going to carry the game as Lifeweaver. That's just like a reality of how that kind of matchup plays out. Also, this ranked range idea is going to be very important once they institute this next change, that after Season 9, most of the grouping restrictions will be gone. Most of them. So if you're Diamond and want to play with a Bronze friend, it will let you do it. But they're going to make some alterations to the matchmaking now and put you in different pools. They're going to have what's going to be called wide group matchmaking, where the match is going to be expected to be more uneven. And I wonder if that's going to be obvious. I suppose once you see the rank range, it will be, because you might see the rank range not be one rank apart like I was saying earlier. It could literally be bronze to diamond now. So making this even more severe than we've expected in the past. We've never had matchmaking games look like this. And I gotta be honest, I've been saying this for a long time. I actually kind of like those games because that's what you get in quick play. It's much more wide and it kind of works out. I don't know if there's a huge benefit to the way the competitive matchmaker has worked so far to like forcibly put it close together. It doesn't really make a difference in my opinion. Either way, you still have to end up doing all of the ranked matchmaking meta strategy I was talking about earlier, even if the matchmaker is trying to put it close together, because you're not necessarily going to be getting the teammates doing the process of swapping accordingly like I was saying, or really leaning into what the match requires. Oftentimes, you as the individual will have to do that regardless. So matches having a wide skill rating, I welcome this change, especially because it's far more important to me to play with my friends than it is to achieve any certain kind of rank. That's not to say that my really high-ranked friends will want to play with me as I weigh them down, but once in a while, maybe they will, because we literally are able to do it now. Music to my ears, considering I've been begging for this kind of thing for literal years. The new guard over there at Blizzard really does listen to us, at least the more hardcore players. I am concerned what this might feel like for the average players, but my assumption is most people will just agree that Overwatch is chaotic regardless of what the matchmaking does, so at least playing it with friends, even if your skill levels are wide, is just going to be a benefit, even if you have to carry some of your trash can friends. I think that's actually way more fun than just like grinding the competitive ladder to get up a rank or two. That doesn't mean anything to me. I'd much rather carry my friends or be carried by my much better friends. Okay, conversely, if you're not in a wide group matchmaking, they're going to have what's called a narrow group matchmaking, and that's going to be either for small or closely ranked players, or solo queue. So in theory, this new system will make solo queue gameplay even better. We'll see if that actually plays out to be the case. And I think they're kind of right, because another side benefit that they do mention is now you eliminate the necessity to need a Smurf account to play with your friends, because that really ruined matchmaking, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, because everybody I know that plays with friends has to have alt accounts and play alt account roulette to see which ones are compatible with other ones. Now we don't have to do that nonsense, and we can just play the game, be put in the separate tier of matchmaking, and maybe those ugly games will be hard enough in order to disincentivize us from doing that anyway. So you might still want an alt account so that you keep your rank pristine and in the spot you want it to be. But if you don't care, like I kind of don't, then it doesn't necessitate you to get an alt account. So a percentage of them definitely will go away. And to that degree, matchmaking will be improved because it will be more honest and accurate about who's in the lobby. Some players will have an absolute conniption fit if they see something like a bronze to masters skill range, because if that's possible, there will be some outrageous boosting attempts, but I don't think it's going to be so hard to figure out who's who in the lobby and to adjust your gameplay accordingly. I personally look forward to this kind of gameplay. I think it's actually more fun, but I also prefer the way quick play matchmaking feels, right? If everyone's equal skill and you have the bad comp, you instantly lose. Whereas if everyone is mixed skills, well, there's going to be weak links that aren't going to even be able to execute the counter comp, right? That you can outplay. And I find that to be a lot more fun. Okay, guys, that's everything from the What's Next panel. Quite packed with information, honestly. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.